Hello and welcome to your monthly horoscope for April for the Sun or the Ascendant. Now I'm going to give you a broad overview of what to expect before diving deep and exploring each of the 12 zodiac signs in forensic detail. So please stay with me for that analysis. Now the big takeout of this month is that we have two new moons, and when this happens, the second is known as the Black Moon. The first new moon is on the 1st in the go-getting sign of Aries, but it combines with Mercury, the planet of ideas, the planet of communication. Aries energy is about initiation and fresh starts. Let's hope some fresh energy is coming through in a constructive way for us all. The second new moon is in Taurus, the next sign on from Aries, because the Sun moves on into Taurus on the 20th. Now this one is in a sextile with the ruler of Aries, Mars. But Mars moves into the sign of Pisces on the 15th. Now Mars moving through Pisces can be a very meditative, or our actions can be very much behind the scenes. Sometimes people who are involved in enterprises such as mining or deep sea diving have Mars in Pisces in their natal chart. So we can expect some things going on behind the scenes that could be positive. And Mars is also in a conjunction with Saturn in the first 9 days. Now Mars in Capricorn, as it was, especially in its conjunction with Pluto, which became exact on the 3rd of March, is a very, very challenging influence. And we know that there has been an outbreak of violence in the very heart of Europe, which is deeply troubling. But once Mars moved on the 6th of March into the sign of Aquarius, and now at the start of this month is combining with the co-ruler of Aquarius, Saturn, there's a much greater desire, I think, collectively to try to get things working in a way which may not be perfect, but is certainly better than that real fight for power that has been imposed at, the latter end of February and the early parts of March. And one of the very uplifting parts of this month's energies is that Neptune and Jupiter, the two co-regents of Pisces, are in a conjunction within 3 degrees through the whole month, and on the 12th that becomes absolutely exact. I think that can be a very healing dimension. I really pray so. Also, Venus moves into Aries on the 5th. Now, Venus in Aries is, to be honest, in detriment. But I actually have always liked Venus in Aries because I think it gives us an impulse to try to relate. To take the first move, not to sit back and wait. So for me, that can be very positive. But on the 11th, Mercury does move from Aries into the sign of Taurus. Now it is going to be clashing with Pluto from the 9th through to the 12th. And that clash of Plutonian energy still in the sign of Capricorn through to 23, part-time goes into Aquarius, then moves into Aquarius in 24, and we really get the start of the Aquarius age, I feel. But we also have the Sun mirroring the right angle with Pluto at the heart of this month, and then that brings in the full moon on the 16th in the sign of Libra. So we have a T-square going between Pluto, the Sun and the moon, and I think that's going to be an interesting point of how there's a pushback against power being used in the wrong way. And the combination of Neptune and Jupiter, which after all, Jupiter is about hope, Neptune can be about healing, but in their home signs, I'm really hoping that there will be a fundamental pushback at the heart of this month, which does see an improvement in Central Europe. Now on the 20th, we do see the Sun, as I mentioned before, moving into Taurus, and then on the 29th, Pluto slams on the brakes. So obviously Uranus was still in retrograde at the start of this year, but this is the first of the big beasts going into their annual retrogrades, and it's going to go on until the 7th of October. This is going to be really interesting, I feel, because the sign of Capricorn is about old power. The sign of Aquarius is much more about taking the best of that old power, but being enlightened about new techniques, being more inclusive. So Pluto going into a retrograde will be interesting for certain political strands in the world. You know, people who've held power in a much more authoritarian way could retreat, or perhaps just reset their purposes. But on the 29th, Mercury does move into its home zone of Gemini, and that can be a really brilliant point for much more communication starting to ping around. Also, the 30th, that wonderful Taurus new moon is in a very positive angle with Mars, suggesting that if we actually take the best of what we already know, or what's been evolving over a very long period of time, which is Mars coming through in its journey, obviously it moves at the heart of this month into the sign of Pisces. So by the end of May, it's going to be readying to go into Gemini, where it's going to be for the rest of the year, because it goes through, and into the first months of next year, because it goes through a retrograde. But I think that what we're going to see as this month comes to a close is much more constructive, workable ways of approaching some of the transitions that may have gone on this month. Now, if you are new to my channel, thank you so much for listening so far. Please, I'd be delighted if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And if you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please subscribe on the link below. It'd be great to have you with me. And also, if you'd like to get your 12-month forecast and character analysis based on your time, date and place of birth, and ascend above your zodiac sign and really get much greater understanding of what makes you tick and your potentials in the time ahead, there is 30% off with my special offer. Please see the link for that below too. Hello Pisces, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for April. This can be an incredibly important month for you. Now, the month begins, of course, with the new moon in the sign of Aries, which is a fresh beginning for us all, the first new moon of the year. For you, this asks you to think about the foundations in your world, about your attitude to everyday money, and it can be about your values in a more spiritual context. But Mercury, the planet of communication, is very close to the new moon, so there's a lot to think about, and there could be some big discussions about how maybe you can improve this important area of life. Now, in your 12th house, you do have Mars in a conjunction with Saturn in the first 9 days. Now, that could actually be quite tough, particularly when Venus is still in Aquarius through to the 5th. But then Venus joins your sign. If there has been some kind of big transition going on in a relationship, or you've been coming to terms with a relationship that's not even in your life now, it may have been a past separation, or maybe you've just been preparing yourself to emerge from the lockdown of COVID and start re-engaging with people socially. That takes a need for confidence, especially if we're out of practice in being with people. Venus moving into your sign is like a line in the sand. You're suddenly going to feel much more empowered. But I have to be honest that Mars conjoining with Saturn in the first 9 days could see some quite powerful issues from your past that need to be worked through. But once Mars moves into your sign on the 15th, and your two rulers come together in an exact conjunction on the 12th, and they're in a terrific alliance all through this month within 3 degrees, do you know, it's really coming together for you, Pisces, in the most dynamic of ways. You're going to feel you're really coming into your own, and some of the painful energies of the last year and a half as Saturn's made its way through your 12th house won't necessarily come to a complete end, but you'll just find new energy, new purpose, and move much more into the present. Now also on the 11th, Mercury is going to be moving out of your second house and into your third. The third is very much to do with quick movement, so it can be going for a walk, it can be cycling or swimming, rather aerobic exercises, Mercury in the third house. It can be about how we think, linked with our neighbours or siblings. So a lot of energy in this area, and it goes into an exact conjunction with Uranus, which has been in this sector since 2019, March the 7th, till now. There was a brief period in 2018 for 5 months. But Mercury is going to be going conjunct Uranus from the 16th to the 20th. And that creates a lot of excitement. Don't be surprised if you find it a little bit harder to sleep across those days, because inspiration will come very easily to you. And all sorts of ideas are going to be just arising from the depths. And you could have many of those proverbial light bulb moments. So expect to be inspired, but very restless. Now on the 12th, as I've mentioned, your two rulers, traditional of Jupiter and Neptune, come together in an exact alliance. You can be very self-sacrificing, very giving for good causes. You can go out of your way to help those that others don't help. But one of the downsides of that, Pisces, is that sometimes you can actually lose your sense of identity, because people can become so attuned to taking from you that they don't acknowledge the worth of what you're giving. So I think the combination of Venus joining with Jupiter and Neptune and them coming together, and then Mars moving into your sign on the 15th, is all saying to you it's vitally important that you do follow your own instincts on situations. And if that means being more single-minded, even if you find that a little tough, then do go with it, because I think there may need to be some kind of rebalance in your situation. Compassion is such an important thing. Your kindness will bring you karmic reward. But there are times when we need to do what's right for us, the individual. So if you feel that you need to be more single-minded, embrace it. If there are exciting ideas developing that you're really stimulated by, have the confidence to pursue them. Now from the 15th through to the 19th, the Sun in the sign of Aries is in a clash with Pluto. You could encounter someone across those days, and even in the second half of this month, whose values don't mesh with yours. It could be a friend, it could be someone you've known for a long time, it could be someone, a newer associate, but the full moon that forges on the 16th is really emphasizing the axis in your chart to do with everyday resources, the second house where the Sun is, and your longer term situation, but also in an emotional and spiritual sense where you're more devoted and invested. But because Pluto in your 11th house is asking you to think future forwards about what you really want, if there's some kind of incompatibility between your values and perhaps what you're receiving from those you're interacting with, the 11th house of society, community, person, kind, you may need to repivot around that area too. So just be mindful of that. However, on the 20th, the Sun bursts its way into the sign of Taurus, joining up with Mercury, joining up with Uranus, but importantly, the North Node. So your way of thinking, your way of connecting, could see you traveling a lot more. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement at the end of this month, because on the 30th we have a black moon in the sign of Taurus, your third house, but critically it forges a sextile, which is a very enabling angle to Mars in your sign. So your passion and individuality, Mars in the first house, mixing with your ability to convey your message, the Sun and the Moon in your third house, it really is a very enabling mix, this. Now, it is true that Pluto goes into a retrograde at the end of this month on the 29th, and on the same day Mercury switches into your fourth house of home and emotion, and that could see you thinking very much about where you live, who you live with and how. But the combination between Venus and Neptune in your sign in the last 5 days of this month could be very spiritually enlightening. It could be that you're going to connect with someone who really has a very vivid energy that's going to impact on you in an incredibly powerful way. Maybe you're going to have that impact on somebody. If you're a creative or artistic or somebody who really embraces things like photography or cinematic expression through videos, you can really be inspired as this month draws to a close. So there's so much to go for this month, Pisces, but particularly for your sign. And it's just making that transition from perhaps a little bit of an inner place at the start of the month, but you're really going to thrust forwards with great conviction the longer this month goes on.